This is a crime of passion, a red-hot murder in a small town where nothing ever happens. And the killer, oh, the killer is pure evil. Someone once said that cooking is a form of love. You take your time, you choose the best ingredients, and at the end, hopefully, there's something delicious to show for it. That was the plan anyway. For Cheryl, she wanted to make her husband Gary a special dinner. She had picked up his favorite ribeye steaks from the butcher and planned to surprise him with some fancy French fries from the new place in town. She even baked him his favorite chocolate lava cake for dessert. It was going to be an evening to remember. All this effort just to tell him how much she loved him. They hadn't had much time alone in the last year. Gary worked long hours at the factory, and when he didn't work, he spent time with his buddies or out hunting. But Cheryl didn't mind. She understood. Their lives were different now. They both had their own things going on. It was just one of those phases, she told herself. And like all phases, it would pass. She could feel it. This dinner was going to be the start of their new life together. Their cozy little home in the middle of the cornfields of Iowa was perfect. The scent of sizzling steak soon filled the house, mixing with the smell of pine and wood from the fireplace. It reminded Gary of better times when they cuddle up by the fire after a hard day at work. He came in from the garage, took off his muddy boots, and walked into the kitchen. There she was, a vision in white, flour on her nose, a spatula in her hand, and a smile on her face that made Gary's heart skip a beat. "What are you making?" he asked, pulling her close. "Your favorite," Cheryl whispered in his ear. "Now go get changed. Dinner will be ready in half an hour." Gary went upstairs to change. He pulled on a clean shirt and stepped back into the kitchen. Cheryl stood there with 2 plates and a bottle of wine. "I also picked up your favorite French fries," she said. "And I baked you a lovely chocolate lava cake for dessert." Gary felt a lump in his throat. No one had ever done anything for him before. He sat down and poured himself a glass of wine. "Thank you," he said quietly. It's so much. I don't know what to say." Cheryl looked at him and saw the man she fell in love with. "All those years ago. Don't say anything," she said. "Just eat." Gary ate. It was the best meal he'd ever had. The steak was medium rare, just the way he liked it. The French fries were crispy and golden-hued. And the wine, well, it went perfectly with everything. He looked at Cheryl, her eyes shining in the candlelight. All those old feelings came rushing back: love, desire, passion. He reached across the table and took her hand. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you," Cheryl replied. After dinner, they sat by the fireplace, sipping wine and talking about old times. Gary told her about the new girl at work, how she had curves in all the right places, and how he couldn't take his eyes off her. Cheryl listened patiently. She knew Gary had been seeing someone else for months. She'd seen the messages on his phone, heard the hushed tones when he talked to her on the phone. But she didn't care anymore. Not tonight. Tonight was about them. "Come here," she said suddenly, standing up. Gary looked at her in surprise, but he followed her nonetheless. She led him to the bedroom and closed the door behind them. In the morning, Gary woke up next to Cheryl. He remembered everything now. The dinner, the wine, the conversation, the passion that flared between them as they made love. Then Cheryl, with a knife. Gary pushed her away and tried to get out of bed, but Cheryl held him down. "Where do you think you're going?" she asked, her voice cold. "I have to tell someone about last night," Gary said. "No, you don't," Cheryl replied. "Why not?" "Because I'm not alive," Gary said, looking down. At his chest, he felt something wet on his hand. He looked down and saw blood. Cheryl had plunged the knife deep into his chest. Gary stared at her in disbelief. "Why?" he whispered. "Because I love you," Cheryl replied, her eyes filled with tears. "I thought maybe if we could just go back to the way things were, that if I cooked you your favorite meal, then you'd come back to me." "I'm sorry, Gary. I shouldn't have killed you. I love you so much." Gary looked at her, his eyes filled with pity. "You're crazy," he whispered. The last thing Gary remembered was the look on Cheryl's face. It was a look of pure evil, a look that sent shivers down his spine. Then everything went black. When the sun rose the next morning, the birds chirping merrily outside, Cheryl's phone rang. She looked at the screen and smiled. It was the local sheriff. "Good morning, Sheriff," she said. "I'd like to report a missing person." She told the sheriff about Gary, how he didn't show up for work, and how she couldn't get through to him on the phone. She was worried sick, she told the sheriff, tears streaming down her face. "Of course, ma'am, we'll have someone look into it," the sheriff said. "Yes, thank you," Cheryl replied. She hung up the phone and wiped her tears. It was time to get rid of the evidence. The police never found Gary's body. They did, however, find the murder weapon in Cheryl's house. But when they confronted her with it, she had a perfect alibi. She had witnesses who could prove she was at the grocery store when Gary was killed. The police were stumped. Cheryl played the perfect little widow. She grieved the loss of her husband, attended his funeral, and even put on a brave face when the other townsfolk came up to her and asked what happened. "We don't know," she told them. The police are still investigating. They all nodded their heads in understanding. No one suspected a thing. Only Cheryl knew what really happened, and she wasn't about to let that secret slip. One day, a private investigator was hired by Gary's family. He started asking questions, and soon enough, he had a lead on Cheryl. He paid her a visit and laid out all the facts. Cheryl played the innocent young woman, swore she had nothing to do with Gary's disappearance, and even offered to take a lie detector test. The pie wasn't buying it, but he needed more evidence. So he left. Cheryl watched him go and smiled. She knew she had nothing to worry about. She had the perfect alibi. Years went by. Cheryl never married again. She stayed in town, too, afraid to leave without Gary, or maybe she was afraid they'd find out what she did. One day, the pie tracked down the witness Cheryl had provided. He was shocked to learn that she had paid him to say he saw her at the store. The two made a deal. The witness would testify against Cheryl in exchange for immunity. The trial was front-page news. Cheryl was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. As she was let out of the courtroom, she caught the eye of an old friend, a former neighbor of theirs who had moved away years ago. He shook his head in disbelief. "I can't believe you did this," he said. Cheryl looked at him, her eyes filled with madness. "I had to," she whispered. "He was seeing someone else. I couldn't let him go. I loved him too much." The neighbor backed away, shaking his head in disgust. He couldn't believe that someone could be so cold, so calculating. Cheryl didn't care what he or anyone else thought of her. She was going to prison for life, but in her mind, she was free. After all, she'd done what she had to do for love. Now, this case has a lot of twists and turns and some pretty dark moments. If you like stories like this, you might also like another story called The Boy Who Cried Murder. It's about a boy who claims his father is trying to kill him, but no one believes him. Check it out.